Six. Good pleasure, quick. Yeah.
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, liberty and justice for all.
Everybody. Once again, working session, the council, no formal decisions, anything like that. Good for dialogue and ideas, etc. Only thing on the agenda tonight, Parks and Rec Department discussion. Dating out, thanks for providing the stats. Sorry, up there.
Yes, so I provided those stats. I don't really know if you guys need something else for tonight's discussion, so if you do, just let me know if there's any questions, but the basis for our discussion tonight is we have our Parks and Recreation Program Coordinator position that is open right now. And I wanted to talk to you guys about this because we've had some struggles in the past. This is a part-time position and it's a, so I'm gonna go back a little bit. So we had Eric, who was like a salary part-time, and then we went to hourly with Emilio, but still part-time position. And we have had to go, at least since I've been with the village, or since we've done this, and you guys, we talked about this after Eric left the village as well, that we wanted to grow the program and see some different things happen. And we've really been, the Parks and Rec Board has been trying to do that. Emilio actually added sand volleyball and we program things like that, but we struggle because it's part-time. And I think managing that time management component of the programs. So I have a recommendation to you guys, and I'm gonna put my recommendation out there just right at the beginning, because then I'm hoping that that'll maybe prompt some questions and dialogue between us and you guys. But I really think that if we want to continue to grow the Parks and Rec programs, and we want to have an individual that's dedicated to growing the programs and giving the programs the time and attention that they need, and I believe we are to the point we need a full-time director to run these programs. And I do think that means that we're going to have to talk about that, because based on our current programs, I think it's part-time, but if there's the growth for more, or they take on the pool, I think that if we have a full-time director, they do all of the Parks and Rec events and programs, not just the sports ones. So I'm going to kind of go back to Emilio. When he was in this position, he did the programs, but he didn't do like Blissfield, and he did help with, but Blissfield on Tap or Light Up the Park. I think full-time would do all of those things. Or if we're unwilling to do that, then or not unwilling, that's maybe not the best way, unable, because obviously there's budget constraints, then I think we need to look at eliminating the sports programs. And allowing them to be run by other individuals. It's my feeling that, and I kind of mentioned this already, that one of our biggest challenges is that time management component. And making sure that we're looking ahead, and we can only do so much when it's part-time position, because the employees that have worked for us part-time have a full-time job, and that's the job that supports their family and affords them to take care of their family in their house. And then this is part-time, so it is secondary in nature, rightfully so. It's not a judgment against them, but that's why I want to talk to you guys about this, to see what we can do moving forward. Obviously, it's a budgeted part-time position right now.
And I know something did help that we had talked about as well. Is it okay on the thing?
Yeah. You can move it closer.
Something that I wanted us to come to the committee the whole session, because way back when it was here, there was some talk about a position that was the desire of Eric's, was to be a full-time position, but the programs were not there. And I think that when we transitioned from Eric going to the next director, Emilio, it did me, we as a council just kind of kept with the same status quo. We didn't kind of sit back and look to see maybe what we wanted, didn't want, what we can afford, what we can't afford, status of the programs, etc. So that is why I think it's imperative that we have that serious discussion of where we want to go next. Part-time position hasn't been successful as what we had hoped. And for a variety of reasons, and it doesn't mean it's a lack of serious kind of question, not wanting to do that. It's just there's a lot of moving parts to it. If you want this program to grow, a full-time person versus a part-time person will have a lot of difficulty with that. I know from the discussions that we've had with Parks and Rec, talking with Lisa, excuse me, that and with Danielle, that a lot of times you're not the director's fault. Questions are asked for our office staff, and they need to know the answers to those questions. And oftentimes they'll know, oftentimes they won't. It depends on what the team is, what the sport is, what it is. But there's a lot of, if there's not someone full-time, it's challenging for the office staff to handle what needs to be. Do we have the finances for a full-time? I don't know what we're talking full-time as. I don't know. If you're talking full-time, if they know that we have to incorporate health insurance, dental insurance, and all of that. I don't know how we swing that. And that's why we've gone with the part-time, if there's something financially you can do. At the same token, I know that it's been something that we as a board have said, well, for lack of better words, how much do we quote give the Parks and Rec? At one point, Parks and Rec was working through financial opportunities for many sponsorships. The sponsorships did go ahead and decrease in number. The sponsorships did increase in number as well, but it's not enough to pay for itself with the sponsorships. There would have to be the money coming from the student on the fund.
And it would be general fund that would have to, the Parks and Recreation budget at this point does not have the ability to fund a full-time director's wages and benefits. And if we went that route, we would have to talk about what the wages, we know what the benefits would be, but what the wage would be. We have a set wage already for the part-time director.
Remind us of it,
But I do think we would need to probably reevaluate that, because we're looking at, like, when Emilio was part-time, he didn't do anything with the pool at all. If you go full-time, I think there's some other components that would have to be pulled, or I shouldn't say have to be, that I think maybe should be pulled into that to justify it, at least until the point that they can get all of the different possible programs up and running, and could reevaluate that. I can tell you what the pages on me. I should have put that in salary.
It is now.
It is now.
Every time Eric was there, it was on it. Yeah, we kind of think.
So it's starting 21.08 an hour and post probation 21.74 an hour.
And what numbers would we be looking at in full-time employees? So you're saying with the health benefits, dental vision, what are the numbers there? Well, you're fine. I know you have.
$67,000 a year.
At that wage.
Yeah.
I was gonna tell you, it's the
Well, if you're saying full time, you're talking 28 hours.
Yep.
Right, plus our benefits, which aren't cheap,
No.
49%, you're about $67,000 a year. I'll just go and say we can't afford that. Perception's reality, but
yeah, it's
for us,
actually
this is
would be
taxpayers looking at.
depending if they're a family, it could potentially be more than that.
Yep.
So I've got a employee cost calculator. And if you factor in a family, so the higher benefits off, you're looking at about 90,000. If it's individual, then it's lower than that quite a bit.
And our average net over these 4 years here, these 4 fiscal years, the average net is positive $20,300. Which would go against the 90.
Yeah, but that's not fully accurate, unfortunately, so if you're looking at the annual, so in 24-25, I didn't put the indirect costs in. So that 14,941, that's the revenues only for direct. So we actually did not need that much. The year before I did include that, we were negative the 53.79. The year before that, so only 23-24 did I actually add the indirect costs. There was some, when I first started doing this, there was some confusion that we looked to be profitable, but we in fact were not, because this is only direct costs. So for example, spring soccer registrations bring in, I'm just going to use round numbers, so let's say $5,000 in registration fees. We're saying the direct cost would be like the jerseys, it would be balls, it would be referees. It doesn't include indirect costs such as like the recreation coordinator wages or bathrooms would be billed to that porta potties, but it wouldn't include like supplies or marketing, things like that. Or like we actually switched to Sports Connect, which doesn't have a fee now. But prior to that, we were using the facility that it did, so it wouldn't have included that subscription fee.
So it's even less than the 20,000.
Yeah. I guess too, I've got to throw it out. I'm not saying an option isn't to continue what we're doing. I guess I just don't know that that's the most successful way for us to continue, or to, if we truly want to grow these programs and offer different opportunities, or if we're going to go part-time or keep it part-time, then maybe we need to say these are the core programs we're doing and we're not doing anything beyond that, because that's the capacity of a part-time person. I just want to be realistic. I don't want to bring in another part-time person and then it be the goals and objectives be unattainable, because again, it's a part-time position, and the odds of us finding I mean, nobody's making a living off of what we're paying them part-time for this position.
Well, and like you said, there's no way for full to eliminate that. That's having. So when you're down to 2 options, you're no director. No director, what would that encompass?
We would have to talk about that. I think we have a Parks and Rec advisory board that I would recommend. I think that they do a lot of valuable work, they do community cleanup days, they do install the pool. Well, unless we're getting rid of that, I doubt it. We still have our actual park facilities, and playgrounds and things, so I think there's some valuable work and things that they could still do. Right now, the way it's set up, I'm over the pool, and then Brent and I are kind of jointly over the park facilities together. I do not have the capacity to do the programs. I don't know, none of our other staff have the capacity to do programs either. It's not this. Again, it does take some time planning, and we're all going to stretch pretty thin with our current responsibilities. Now, I don't know, we'd have to talk about like the Parks and Recreation Advisory Board, they do some other activities, like we've got our Light Up the Park event. It's not sports related, it's volunteer run. We've got, so we'd have to talk about what your expectations or thoughts are on those two, or like our community volunteer days. We've got the parks is the beautification project for that little median. They were talking about getting, we like low crazy at the pool. And some events out there, walking wag. Last year we did picnic in the park and some other things as well. So we'd have to talk about what that would look like.
3-on-3.
Right, so the 3-on-3, all of the sports programs were ran by the program for you.
And was the yeah.
Did help a little bit last year, but that is a subcommittee of the Parks and Rec Advisory Board, so it did not fall under Emilio's like.
I say that because I know that.
Yeah.
If we didn't proceed forward with Parks and Rec, the we would lose. I'm just gonna throw them out here, adult volleyball, spring soccer, the sand volleyball, fall soccer, light football. What about the adult softball? So we lose that as well.
What would,
They would, well, we would not say lose it.
Well,
Volunteer base.
well, yeah, I mean, we're not necessarily, yeah, right.
It's not saying stuff to everybody.
right,
They just wouldn't fall under our umbrella.
Underneath the Parks and Rec umbrella.
Yes. Then you have. I guess the remaining things that are listed in over the years, if you light up the park. Blissfield on tap. Triathlon. Trying to see if there's any other thing.
cheer, like cheerleading, no cheer would be gone, yeah.
We lose about half of what we throw. Just do it.
More of people, yeah, I mean, not factoring in the pool stuff, it's more.
Right.
I did reach out to some other communities in the area as well to see what they do, just trying to get some different ideas. So City of Crumpsey is like its whole animal in itself. They have a facility, so they do have a full-time director. They actually have a couple full-time staff and a couple part-time. But they do quite a bit of things with their rec center. So they have a lot more ability to provide different programs and activities and events. It's not just sports. Hudson does not do anything. Manchester doesn't do anything. Clinton does. Right now, their soccer program is volunteer ran kind of under that, like their employees do the striping, they use their facilities, but they are getting ready to talk about potentially going to a full-time position there as well. So I'm not sure like timeline, what they're looking at exactly for that. And then Adrian, they actually got rid of their parks, their sports programs. Well, they got rid of Parks and Rec programs completely in 2013. And then I think it was either 2019 or 2020. They brought them back, but what they did is they hired a full-time director, but they partnered with the Adrian School District. So the Adrian School District pays in, I don't know what they pay today. When the program first started, I think it was 30,000, and then the city of Adrian paid the rest of it for the director's wages. And then the director kind of manages the budget. But then all of the programs are volunteer based. So everybody below him. So he doesn't, well, if that position's opening up right now, but it was anybody below him just would volunteer to run like whatever they were passionate about.
Question. In these programs, could they be self-governing? I'm gonna ask you, let's talk about adult softball. Do you think that if you got out of it as a director, that there would be somebody who stepped up to run the adult softball program? It would look like it's about 3 teams.
This past season, we had 4 teams down from the year. For softball specifically, there would be quite a few interests. That they would actually take the lead on that, people volunteer that on that. Adult softball, there are Put money that come to mind that would give them that.
What, I'm gonna speculate that possibly the same thing for sand volleyball.
I would challenge that one a bit. That was challenging this program before. You had drop-in, but for leagues back in the same shit, but just design be probably.
I did see people coming in for drop-in when the league was going on. Interested in doing it the next year, so with it being a new program, there's definitely room for growth. Being in a different league, indoor, even other people, there's a lot of growth there with it being new, like you said.
I think the same goes for soccer and like football. I'm sure somebody take on a specific age division. But if you're talking from 4 all the way to 12 that you had, that's. Again, that's just.
There's a lot of
Yeah, numbers are much higher in spring, as fall, if we involve for, raw program, sport, just those down to find it. Program.
So if you have the opportunity, even if I'm to own a church. You have the opportunity.
I did, another considering, they're looking at it right now.
Considering.
Flag football.
That was only like football, there's no other.
They already are doing soccer. And, like cheer games and then something for basketball. I don't think their cheer is,
Their cheer is like their outdoor program.
yeah, it's not like a full game schedule. I think it's more like camp.
It's really is for all the animals.
They have cheerleading for indoor basketball. If you ever get person out there you for basketball, but you already play.
Okay.
They also have a volleyball league as well. I don't know where that starts, but
The Element Church had them. Yeah,
anything during the coach they try to have.
yeah, they're doing a lot.
Youth sports, nice, at least
Not the adult.
they do have dollar early time.
What I noticed with Element Church is typically is that it's a reach, not quite as big as what is in the village. It's also limiting, with it being a religious organization, speaking with people, not wanting to be involved in that. That's part of that limit of reach as well.
That goes back to cool competition sort of discussion though. If you have 5 different entities, if we do it, obviously does it, and the ad hoc, you know, the churches do it, whatever. Like. Each group can only do something so well, why not consolidate? I would much rather put our money towards say, hey, you know, if we can't do it well, let's kind of do it all. Maybe this entity, well, we can supplement them, we can get buses and get people to these. You know, to talk to your agent or whatever, if they want to partake in it, because obviously recreation is important. And I'm not trying to move on it, but again, if we can't do it well, you know, we only get so many people to sign up, participate, it really doesn't make it.
I have a question. So like on soccer and like flag football, are all games played here in Blissfield or do they go other places?
You could head on if you want Danielle for the older groups, then you travel. At the 6th grade flag, does travel. 8 and older for soccer, you travel as well. We do have game calls as well.
However, practices are in town, which is big, kids are walking themselves while their parents are still at work, riding their bikes, things like that.
We play Ida Dundee, see Clinton on 7.
I'm just trying to get it.
Yeah, so U4 and U6 soccer stays here, and then first through 4th flag stays here, and 5th and 6th flag does travel as well.
It's on at 40 minutes. I think the furthest is that to the borough for soccer. That was exception.
I was just curious, because I know that I have kids. Or are there like businesses that sponsor things for like their uniforms or something, or do these kids when they want to play, they pay to play?
Well,
Would that include their,
so we do charge a registration fee and then we have, typically got sponsors in the past. We did try to redo that last year. So our sponsorships have been going down, for a while. And last year they were up a little bit, still down overall, but up from the previous years. So we did try to do that to help keep our costs so that they were affordable, but we weren't getting so much that it was like covering all of our expenses or anything. So you guys have the last couple of years, have had to do an appropriation from general fund into the Parks and Recreation budget because we've not been able to sustain the Parks and Recreation budget. And I say they, it's all of us, like, it's just with what we are at.
Right. Appropriate.
So like this year, this year we moved the pool into it, so there was quite a bit more, but the portion of that appropriation for just the Parks and Rec programs this year was $10,000. Last year was $7,500. The year before, I think, was 75, and before that, you guys did not appropriations, but they went into the hole as well. Which is kind of what prompted us to ask for that appropriation.
so, and with these sports that need.
Yes. Yeah, and we're not paying our refs like, they're not making much. Our soccer refs get paid $20 a game. And then our softball refs get paid. You changed that. It was just one ref, one up for softball.
They did one, they got 4.
Prior to that, we had a couple at 35, but he was able to find one. And then, some of our program, like, for the younger flag groups, we didn't have anybody. For volleyball in the past, we've not had anybody for the adult league. So we try to keep our costs as minimal as we can while still providing the program at a somewhat higher, more than just a basic education level, I guess. I'm not gonna say we're highly competitive, 'cause that would be inaccurate, but
Going back to the 90,000, what portion of that salary, what portion of that's benefits? What's the breakdown of the total 90,000?
I'll have it open in my computer. So salary is about 60,000, and then the rest would be benefits. About 3.
So if you did the previous week, the $41, whatever it was, that goes up to 45,000. It's a change. So where's the 60,000 salary coming from? Typically, a director will, I don't know if we'll see 60,000, especially for. Size. I mean, it's not much of a savings, right? You're saying.
So we're factoring in their PTO bank and some other things in that salary is why it's bumped up, because once they start accruing. So then that becomes a liability to the village. So the base salary, I have it's 45,290, right? So, which is technically still a benefit. So base is 45, but again, we factor in that bank, and then we add health insurance, dental, disability, pension, eye care, workers' compensation, social security, and Medicare. And that's what bumps us up. And that's not exact, because I don't know, like, what we would pay for family benefits is very different than an individual. So I'm doing this on the high end, like kind of worst case scenario. If it's an individual, or they opt out, because we do offer that. I think it's not very much, but yeah, they could. Then they only get 67 a month. And none of the benefits, so then you're looking at 60,000. So but I'm trying to tell you guys worst case, because
Right.
I don't wanna say it's 60 and then we hire somebody with a family and it's 90 and you guys go, what the heck do we?
Yes. I don't know, what. In our master plan and goals of housing for our village. I guess that, again, that's the reason I kind of wanted to have this discussion. What do we have a goal for what we want our parks and rec to look like? I mean, if we have a goal, let's just say I'm a full-time person. Okay, we're not being there now, but is that something we should be looking at? I don't know, I'm just having the conversation. Is it the thing that we just simply say, no, that's not an option, don't want to do it? There are kids, adults to still participate, but if other entities. And then
The only way I see of hiring somebody full time for that is charging more.
In how many hours a year would you spend on the pool invest in them?
Gosh,
This would be what, end of April until August?
yes, but we have really good managers, so a majority of my time is actually spent from like January to April.
was it upfront?
It's that upfront, and then while the pool, and that's me like getting our licenses, scheduling the opening, ordering all the chemicals, getting all of the paperwork and things that we have to do. And then once the managers come on board, I really don't do much out there. Other than like I check in with them to make sure that they have what they need, and make sure they have chemicals, things like that. If they have an issue with the pump, they call Public Works. So it's pretty minimal once it's up and running. And then at the end of it, I have a little bit of time. Usually just like finalizing, I gotta submit all of our reports to the state. I usually inventory like what do we have for chemicals, so I know what to order next year. Things like that. And this last in 25 year, I've got it now where I'm I've got all the templates, I've got most of it built up, so it took me far less than this year than it has this years, but why we put a number.
Oh, that's okay, I was just looking at a justification for a full-time director.
Yeah.
It's 100 hours for 40 hours.
Got nothing, but I don't, I obviously do a lot of other things that, you know. I'd have to really think about it, because I don't want to like the wrong hours.
So if there were a full-time director, you could put all that.
I would recommend that, yes, if you guys go with the full-time director. I would actually recommend that they do parks and recreation in its entirety, so if right now the park facilities are Brent and I would do that director and Brent. Obviously, I would oversee all of that, and if I needed help, but it wouldn't be me it wouldn't be me doing the day-to-day things. So I would see them over the pool, over those parks and rec facilities and the programs.
That adds a lot of value to be able to free up space and time for Danielle as well. Definitely help you.
Like the idea of director.
Right. Oh, that would be the catch now. That, and that's where something that I don't know how to get put in for goals. This role we had done. That. Wow.
Well, I mean, I think that's why we stuck with part of that, because I mean, it is, I know I'm not the same. Let's hire somebody, we have tons of money, we got this pot of gold, I mean, that's not the case. I think you're right, Gwen, like, I guess, but and if we get rid of like we get rid of the programs, and that's our goal, but then I don't think.
I don't want to come back.
It's fair for staff to spin our wheels if that's the goal either. So I do think it's important that we decide what that is or what we kind of envision.
Just saying, a perfect world, we were able to, for fund six, hire full-time parks. And then we give that like a 3-year plan. See if we grow programs, maybe it's like right. If the programs grow, participation brings some of the stuff. Then at the end of that, trial period, we reevaluate. If we go back to. Is that a good idea? Is it? I think it's very soon.
I think it's a great idea, because it boils down to, the cost.
If I may, you hire a full-time role, I think a lot of the indirect costs that they speak of would be eliminated, right? Paying the lines for soccer and softball, you now as a full-time employee have the time to do that. Unfortunately, I was below over 2 years. If you talk to Brett, I did not fit into the full-time job. You know, by the time I wanted to go paint the lines, it was right? So that's the indirect cost that goes away. I also think you see what Laura does. Laura's very good at what she does. Been doing it for quite some time. You also have the time to focus slowly on factors and setting yourself a goal of $20,000. So not only would you be eliminating some costs, I know you would be increasing your costs for the salary and all these good things. You'd have so much more time to focus on what you need to focus on. Where quite frankly, I just did not have the time part-time. We did have our goal for sponsorships. I think we had great thing going, just not to the level where it needed to be. There's other things in that nature as well. New programs, like just for example, Ellis Park is not used for adult softball. The whole summer is split. There's things that you can do there. There's gym space available at the school that we can utilize. There's mods, availability, and growth. I think you make a good suggestion with the. I don't know if 3 years is the number. I don't know if we know what that number is. I think it would take probably closer to 3 to 5. I just think if you were to hire someone full time, the right person, and focus on those things, I think it would be successful. Just that you would eliminate some costs, increase in costs. That's just my perspective of doing 2 years as a part time. So
how much? How much time did you put in? I know you didn't have enough time. How much time did you put in? How much time would you have needed?
Yeah, I think like Danielle said before, it's hard to say. There's so much time that you did not even think to add in. Simple calls, simple things.
So on average, Miligo was doing like 12 to 15 hours a week. I would say on average, there were obviously like in the fall, there would be weeks where it was higher than that, but there would be weeks where it's a little bit lower. But keep in mind those 12 to 15, that was only for the sports programs. So again, Emilio didn't do the pool, he didn't do the parks, and he didn't do like some of the events, again, Light Up the Park, Blissfield on tap. So it was just those adult, not just, I don't want it to sound like it was nothing, but.
And the question really, it's tough to say. I think Danielle alluded to it in the fall many times around. You gotta go to work tomorrow. Yeah.
And that goes back to what I kind of said at the very beginning, is I think the challenge with the positions that the people that were in those positions before, I think the majority of our frustrations come back to that time management component. And again, this is part-time for them. They are working a full-time job to support their families. So then this kind of gets not the full dedicated time that it really needs to be successful. And if I'm like Mike said, or I think it was Mike that said it earlier, if we can't do it right, then we're gonna do it.
We met success in part-time.
So we looked at like what the programs were, what the participation, we tried to look at our costs overall and what we were doing, as well as
Some of
those
those
things were
level,
getting. Right.
whether or not sponsorship of being there were times.
No, there was tasks being completed like related to that.
And that right now you have to growth of the program. But for example, the number of soccer, the growth of the program of soccer, and then the growth of the programs, the type, adding on to softball, adding on to volleyball. I mean, so.
Yeah.
Do you mean that's for the focus, what is it, soccer?
No.
I mean, that would.
But then, yeah, the amount of opportunities.
Would we want that to be what in the future?
I don't think. Well,
It's just a
when we
bonus.
look at it as, from an advisory board, like, yes, more participants, that's the percentage of growth, if you will. The 10% growth is the 2%. I mean, we didn't get into the details with all of that, simply because how do I say this? We weren't ready to. We weren't ready for that kind of year. I don't know if that makes sense or not, but we weren't quite there. I do think that there was momentum going to a degree in the folks who I do feel that where it was, simply because where we were with the sponsorships, where they were. Yeah, and we did use them to start to try. I definitely say that. I see the different programs coming in here, but the time that it takes someone to do it well, where something didn't get lost in the transition. The orders were made on time. The costs were on time. Information was sent out at the appropriate time. The amount of time the office staff was working and answering questions. Well, when does this program happen? What's the cutoff date? I mean, you try to have that, and I'm not saying neither person did that. It's a challenge when you're part-time. So let's just pretend you're here part-time, 9 to 12. 5 hours, you know somebody's gonna be coming in at 12:15, and you're not gonna be there until it's
Then the whole staff have visits of each question.
that's my understanding. Would you agree with that, Danielle?
I mean, really would be, person comes in, there needs to
They
be.
have to fill it off. Sometimes they did, and sometimes they didn't.
That would correct.
Some were here, yeah.
That's just-
It did fall into good track.
Let me ask you a question. So some communities have club sport programs. Would you consider, or what we do here, we consider club sports?
I don't know what club sport,
So I mean, it's kind of like,
like baseball.
I had what I think club sport is that get a bunch of like-minded parents and who want their kids to play flag football. They form a club. They run it themselves. You know, I think it's not supported by.
We actually had a soccer club that I was on the board. And that is very, like this, how we structure our programs are similar to club sports, other than we have a village staff right now that kind of manages it. But it's still heavily volunteer based because all of our coaches are volunteer. So that coordinator kind of oversees the volunteers, where club sport, typically you have, it's similar to baseball, but how Little League is set up, you typically have a board and then have all your volunteers under it.
Or self-support.
They are, yes. Yeah,
But
so like,
it's a pay to play.
right, so all 3 of my kids, we did, again, it was soccer, so all 3 of them played. And we paid like $450 a year for that. My girl. Actually, it was probably 450 season. Now that I'm like really thinking about what I did, it was a lot. where our costs, like right now for soccer, we charge set 65 for U4, U6, and 75 for U8.
Yeah, did they, do the tournaments? Or how was that?
So the club that we were in, we had games, we did mostly have tournaments, so our games were like, we would go play other communities and games, but they weren't like official regulation of counted games, only the tournament would, or like your actual score, your official records. But we did play other communities, and that was included in that fee, but you had to travel to wherever. Wyoming's different than Michigan. We would have to travel like 4 hours. Michigan, things are a lot closer, so you don't have to travel that far, but they were very successfully ran. They would be fully, I mean, typically it's set up similar to like a nonprofit. Our club made enough money to cover the cost of jerseys, liability insurance, because we did have to hold our liability insurance. And that was pretty much it. Anyway. Yes, official, but you had to pay a tournament. That would cover officials, but that's, I mean, we covered our expenses and we didn't have much left after. But I think that's probably on most. But they made enough to fund whatever their costs are. And you guys have some facility costs, your Jersey, I mean, so it would be very similar to that.
So we're basically saying a part-time director cannot grow this program. The oversight.
Yes.
Because the time and the book to.
Yeah, unless we get a part-time director that's also donating part-time.
So what are ways we can break? Like, like, how many songs?
Softball, we have one with the village, and the school has,
We'll have it. High school and varsity.
okay, so two. The village owns the Rotary one at Ellis Park, that's the only softball one.
That's where was that?
It's in the back behind the old pool site.
Okay, but that's a softball field.
Yes.
And the other one is up by
The one up front by 223 is. Right.
Yeah, 16-foot bases in there.
Yes.
Alice, yeah.
And then we don't do baseball, but we have Meyer Barwood for baseball.
So this part-time director maintain.
So that was one of my questions to you guys is did we just say we're not adding or doing anything else? So we did cut the tackle football and the cheer program both, and then cheer was added this year. But we have added like flag football was first through 4, and we added 5th and 6th because we got rid of tackle. So I don't know that that's active. I think that mostly a part-time director could do, I think we'd have to done something. Personally. And we talked to them about it when we got rid of tackle, and I just don't think they have the staff or maybe funding staff both. And I'm really sure about it.
and I'm just going by from when we were in Hanover. They had youth football and they played either Hanover or they played Munster or, but each of those schools had football. So, and they had sponsors, like company sponsors. And then, there's those really cheer at the football. So, but I, and it's huge. I mean, my son played football when he was in third or fourth grade, fifth grade. Probably played at the school. And there was cheerleading programs in each of the schools that cheered, but it was all done through the school. And the school benefited.
That's kind of what Adrian said. That's why they partner with their school district, because then the school district uses their program as kind of a feeder program to get the kids started, and then hopefully they go into their school district and they play whatever sport it is.
And when we started doing cheerleading, my cheerleaders with the coaches, well, eventually it got big enough, the parents took over. We supplied. That was all here, it costs us nothing, that will buy the uniform.
Around here, every
There are,
struggle
because
with-
everybody gets busy with their kids and, but I mean, these programs still. School based.
Mr. Chair, what I think you're describing would be doable under a full-time role to have that partnership and constant communication with the student. I can have the time.
Right.
Uh,
But I don't understand why the school doesn't do something.
correct.
It amazes. I know. I've got something I see how every school has. About the.
Yeah, I don't want to speak with Danielle's conversation with the school, but the few that I had, say AD and other coaches of other football and cheerleading programs, there's especially straight up. They don't have the time or resources. So.
As much as I would hate to see programs can be cut, especially adult programs, having adult programs does affect children as well. The well-being of parents is important. But the youth program should trump the adult programs. So if we're looking at a part-time person, cutting the adult programs would make the most sense first. It should just, in my opinion, not even be a consideration to just on off these successful programs such as soccer and flag football into no man's land.
And
Or-
I'm looking at these numbers that are higher than.
Absolutely. For the conferencing, it's over 600 registrations for the entire year. It would be, you talk about the transition into giving it to, say, hypothetically Element Church. It's not a quick transition because we want them to continue to be in contact with the families that have been in these programs for years and years, and not have these families have, oh, there's nothing available, that's it. And that's kind of goes back to the reach portion I was talking about earlier. They just don't have the reach and that history with the families to keep them in mind, to keep them up to date with what's going on. It would be such a shame to see all programs that been eliminated, and that would be.
I agree. There's elimination of programs that should be.
And I participate in all of the
Because they-
adult programs. It's not easy for me to say I enjoy it, but if that's the sacrifice that needs to be made to keep these programs within the village, that's what needs to be made.
I also think to your point earlier, Bill, to talk about programs that someone would take on. I think it would be, you have a better chance of an adult taking over adult sports than an adult taking over for volunteer.
I agree.
Because I personally think that adult softball could be a self-supporting, self-governing entity in that. And they can still do it and not rely on funds from, village.
How many adult softball teams did you have?
This past fall's for,
What's the most you've ever had?
And
When I was
just
here.
each other, or did they have four?
we all played in Blissfield on Thursday nights. The most I had was 7. Same volleyball, I think was 6 as well. I remember that. Indoor volleyball was 7 or 8.
So with softball, did they pay to play and then that?
Perhaps it's, coach fees, indirect costs is right, like my wages, DPW wages for the field, things of that nature.
Yeah,
Equipment,
I think that's a lot. 16 city sites,
This fall,
14.
I guess
That's kind of the one.
I gotta throw it out there too. I agree with keeping youth if we're gonna cut program, but you're also like soccer. And like, those are the programs we're not covering our too. So,
I would say with that, my suggestion would be, they look nice, they're great and all, but maybe an upward of high 20s per year. Those are the programs you're looking at, something has to give.
yeah, either the fee goes up or they're getting t-shirts or.
You still can get a nice drive-in t-shirt for under 15 bucks, it's not the beautiful quality, but it's still better than the competition.
Or a child not having a program.
I mean, what kind of jerseys are we?
There are some of them. Plus,
I mean, if I had a child that played soccer and. Oh,
I'm just, I wanted to make sure you guys, when we're talking about all the things that,
yeah,
yeah, I mean, I don't. That's fine if we want to do that, I guess, those are things to consider.
Yeah, absolutely. Everything should be considered, looked at in depth of where costs can be sacrificed, fees going up. Cutting a program should be absolutely last resort for you.
so they don't talk about the business. We have seen about on. If you don't want to go to school.
yeah, 2 adults, one's big indoor.
And how many coaches were we short last year for soccer? You had to. You had to scramble there for several weeks trying to get, you remember?
At least 3.
I think it's more than that.
At least 3 lead into the week of the first game that Monday. First game Saturday.
And when you're finding these coaches, they live here. So.
Yeah.
How many did you start with? Do you remember?
Guarantee at the beginning of the year, probably less than, probably about 40%. I found probably another 40% the week before first game. I was scrambling for a few more that we got.
So I just want to bring that up too, because if these programs are to be successful. We can put a part-time director, but if we don't have the people to volunteer to coach these teams and to step up and help. Then they're not going to be successful either.
So how do you go about advertising for like the spring and fall soccer team? You say, we're gonna sign up for spring soccer, we need some coaches, we need this many coaches to be able to. How do that, how do people?
So registrations go out on our social media, our website, on contact and then WLBN. And then we've been giving coaches, they get one child that plays for free to try to incentivize them to help out. Not that much, but it saves them the registration. They put that out kind of at the same time, like.
And is there a deadline? To sign up and have a coach in place?
Well, there is a deadline to sign up, but you can also register beyond that. But yes,
Is that where you got one player?
no, typically like after registration will take a few more people. It's not typically a whole nother team, right? We're usually short after registration deadline. I just bringing, I don't want to sound like I'm like going on everything. I just also wanted to think about if we're gonna continue doing these things. I think we should be them successful, and these are the common that we need to talk about. And so please don't think I'm just trying to be like negative for here.
I don't think you're being negative, Nancy, I think you're right. What's taking place? Because you don't know. If you don't know the background, you don't, and that is important. I remember days talking about struggles with hope. I remember that discussion.
We struggle, but we struggle hiring reps, we struggle, I mean, with all of it. We literally have struggled with almost every component, I think, like. Of the program, I don't know if the answer is or isn't, but
Sounds nice. When you start to look at the behind the scenes. A lot of people are that. Yeah. It's almost that simple. It's that, okay, great, you got your team, who's gonna coach it, who's gonna rep it? Who's gonna rep things?
I think a lot of these, if I could just switch gears for a moment, I kind of wrote this out so I could stay on track and really try to hone in on what I think is important and kind of not super stoked to be sharing this with you, but the way it's come about is concerning and needs to be brought to your attention. But to catch you up to speed, the board received notice on November 12th that our November 18th advisory board meeting was canceled. Within that email, we were also notified that Emilio was no longer working for the village. That was 9 days after his stop date. And it wasn't until I asked the reason for canceling the meeting, which it was stated that it was due to no new business. And that it would be best for council to meet and discuss before bringing anything to the advisory board. 27 days later, I followed up regarding registrations for adult volleyball because I noticed they were not open. It was in that email exchange where I pushed for an explanation and was made aware that they would be recommending to the council to either hire a full-time position or eliminate all programming. A very, very big recommendation that potentially has great impact on families. And it was stated in the press release regarding the issue with the chief and all that, that the village is committed to transparency. And in this case, transparency should have meant that when an administrative recommendation directly impacts the mission and the responsibilities of the advisory board, that information is shared with us in advance and discussed in an open meeting. And in this case, the board was not informed that a recommendation to hire a full-time coordinator or eliminate all programs was being made to council. And the scheduled meeting was canceled by Danielle, removing the opportunity for us to have that discussion and possibly come to you guys with these maybe resolutions specifically about soccer. Pam is really involved with soccer, knows a lot of families within them. So that may convey in our yes, Pam on the board. That might have solved issues and gave you guys more perspective of what we can bring to the table as board. And Danielle is driven and kind and efficient, but there are some things that we look towards for yourself, the advisory board, for answers, and it's framed as advice or recommendations. But there has been, especially with canceling the meeting, overstepping, which has led to unclear expectations and goals. Several individuals have noted concerns about delegations, even just recently in her evaluation. I understand her passion, but what I observed on the board appears to be a deeper issue. Does the administrator even have the authority to cancel an advisory board meeting? Neither the bylaws or the administrator job description grant that authority. There's no clause that supports it, yet it was done. Despite the resignation of both the board member and the coordinator, with an upcoming program where registrations have not been open. There's been no communication with the board and more importantly, the community. It was not posted on the Facebook page regarding the meaning of the cancellation of the meeting or registration. And the other reason is they thought it would be best to discuss with you guys the programs before meeting with the advisory board, which is in direct opposition of what was expected a year ago regarding voting, getting rid of tackle football. The advisory board would meet, and then we would come to you guys. This shift in the process is definitely what raised a red flag for me, and upon pushing for an explanation, I would not have known that was her recommendation. Get rid of programs or work full time. The board was made aware of this meeting. But we were told to come, we could share our thoughts without knowing that was the recommendation. And our thoughts that we would share would have been exponentially different and unprepared if we didn't know that. I don't believe that this was a lapse in judgment, unfortunately, or an oopsie. And essentially what was done was canceling a meeting and prevented us from having any sort of discussion on that. And that type of maneuvering should not be accepted, and there should be checks and balances and consideration of amending bylaws, so something like that doesn't happen again. Again, like, love Danielle, I think she's amazing in what she's done, but that was concerning that that has happened that way. It seems like fortunately deliberate. You know, my recommendation on the coordinator position stands. When did you know that this recommendation wanted to be brought up?
I did some specific recommendation brought up. I know there was some questioning. I knew that we would be discussing the position and where we, as the trustees want to go in the future. That much maybe was going to be discussed. And so I just, I state that, I knew that. Does that make sense?
It does, hesitant of it. Did you exchange emails regarding the recommendation with Danielle or anyone? Did you leave for any reason? Discuss this recommendation at all?
The recommendation of no program or full-time, no, we did not. No, what I met with Danielle on was, talk about the program. I knew, we don't know, we think that's part of it. Danielle, then you don't have any person. I knew that this was gonna be taking place, and I had requested this to take place, we could do a whole meeting talking about parks and where everybody was going. I knew that that was taking place. I didn't think that what Danielle did as far as canceling the meeting in the month of November was a big deal because I knew that this was the opportunity to talk about the program going forward. That makes sense.
It does for you, however, it completely cut the advisory board out of having these discussions. And knowing this recommendation, it prevented us from our role to even be a part and come together.
I didn't think that that was the case in.
There is plenty of new business.
With the advisory,
Yeah.
We were, but as I stated, had we not known this was the recommendation, we would be unprepared, not knowing what's being discussed, and blindsided, essentially. We're talking about cutting all programs or cutting all adult programs now in this discussion.
And
I don't-
why we're having this. What we. You know, to either keep programs going. That's what I'm getting out of this.
Yeah,
That's why
absolutely,
I
but
would
the
hear.
advisory board did not have that opportunity. And somebody who is not on the advisory board took it upon themselves to cancel a meeting. It is a gray area.
It was the advisory board as a board, why did you? So we all discuss that.
Absolutely, but our role as an advisory board is completely different than the committee of the whole. We could have answers, more answers for you as to how to solve some of the solutions and coaches and referees. If we had the chance to have that,
But this is an open discussion.
Not the fun policy back on that. And the council work session, exactly right. Should be a very valid point. This is what us to talk about, what we want to see with that, the Parks and Rec program. So again, I'm not trying to stifle you guys or anything, but we need to stay on top of your hand. And again, we've been pretty generous at obviously. Both these folks have.
Well,
But
but
again,
we also, wait,
Go ahead.
1 second, let me. We've also asked the specific Amelia, we directed the questions to Amelia, so that's only fair that you
Yes.
speak.
it's also not fair for us to do that answer. especially after, I mean, he's graciously here.
He is graciously here, but
After what had happened, he probably doesn't have to.
he doesn't have to, but the council doesn't need to be right.
My point is, again.
But we are asking,
Yes,
but we are
going-
asking.
Going back to the big picture again, this is, and again, that's what I don't like about having 4 different committees and subcommittees, et cetera. Versus a board, a council. Again, I'm not trying to be the know-all.
What am I missing?
I'm not trying to be the know-all see-all here, but again, much like we discussed in a different subcommittee, you and I.
Yes. I
You
know.
know, how do these tiers operate? Is it a bottom up approach or the top down approach? Again, this this Parks and Rec committee has a lot of great ideas. I'm just going through the capital improvements. I mean, 60,000 for tennis courts, 200 for the park, 300,000 for the skate park, down the line, and that's not even getting to 2029. We're talking about millions and millions of dollars that a board, an advisory board, is spending all this time thinking, oh, we want this, but maybe this council, this board, this ultimate decision maker in funding. It's a pipe dream for us to pull that stuff. It's ridiculous to sit here and waste our time talking about hundreds of thousands of dollars of improvements, let alone we're talking about a $60,000 to $90,000 staff member. Again, I hate when my boss is saying big picture, but that's really what it is. But again, you guys in the office know how busy you guys are. I'm sure, we've discussed it with the office and how important that would be. We talked about how we're still down a police officer. We're talking about how DPW is limited on, right? So again, this is the greater good, the greater good of the public. And I don't want to just poo-poo all the programs away because recreational, that means important. But again, we've got so many hands in the pot in a lot of these committees. And I know some of you guys get offended by it, and I'm trying to offend anybody by it. These volunteers, committee members, et cetera. But again, there needs to be a change from a change that they make out in the end, right? And it needs to, again, the Parks and Rec master plan was a great thing. I think that was great because again, that helps us sort of determine. But again, you've got this conflicting of does this go with the overall vision of the village and how we're seeing the next 20 years, the 30 year or 50 years. What kind of input did we have as a council towards the Parks and Rec department board saying you're on the right track or you're not up there, right? Obviously, things change things like that. But again, it's sort of the balancing act of who's really ultimately making decisions, right? So again,
But don't you?
it's a wants versus needs thing.
But
for
don't
me.
you think that some of the decision making, when we make these decisions, we also need to hear the people that are at the foundation, at the ground level. If we don't know some of the things that are out there, then how can we make some choices?
Say yes, but again, that's also our job. And again, if you want to really get the nitty of it, we need to do our job. Really 100% into this, right?
Well, I
say,
thought I was in charge of that.
but the board as well, right? So again, budgetary wise, programming wise, things like that. I talked about how we go through things. Well, somebody else can, we shuffle things around and look at the approach, right? To get people the opportunity to have, and we know how important the park system is, recreation, health, all that kind of stuff for the liability, not just your own physical, right? It's good for bringing people in, good for drawing, good for people like that. But again, perception reality, like I said before, we get to see the ins and outs of the budget. We understand how this stuff is funded, right? People are gonna be like, oh, you're gonna spend $70,000-$90,000 on a full-time director. Why is my water bill $150, right? And again, we know the ins and outs of it, but a lot of this all gets funded from the general fund, right? And how long did we sit here a budget project and say, oh, wait, the whole day, this to the.
I'm not saying that there's gonna be a full person.
But I'm just trying to get stuff about sports larger. We're talking bring this, what the way I'm all right with this. It goes back to the big picture of can we afford to do these things well? I would much rather than pay a $70,000 and $90,000 person say, you know what? In 1 year, we can build pickleball courts. In another year or two, we can redo a skate park, right? And those are the facilities that we're providing, rather than having somebody sort of do these little ad hoc programs that we don't really all that well, or you have the opportunity to keep on there. I wish we had a YMCA. I wish we, the school had a pool, et cetera, things like that. But it's not how it is. About 300,000 a liner, about pool costs a year, about tennis court replacement, lighting in the park. again, these are all pipe dreams things when we don't have the money. As we, right? So again,
Which means goal.
but we also have to face reality stuff, right? For me, I would much rather say, why do we have, I get the idea behind an advisory committee, but they don't really get to ultimately make a decision because they don't have a person, they don't have any funding, anything like that.
I completely agree, but then you guys don't have to sit here and talk about the nitty-gritty of coaches
Yeah.
and this and that. And that's what I'm trying to get at, is that we were not able to do and provide our role.
But again, big picture items, how much does it cost to have your strike, how much, labor costs, how much does it cost to provide the balance act with the schools on using their facilities versus water. I mean, these are all big picture, expensive items that we're talking about. And if we had all the money in the world, let's have it, but we don't, right? We're nickel and dime stuff here. And we're cutting pieces and we're adding pieces. And for me, fiscally responsibility for the big picture for the residents and affordable.
I'm gonna disagree with some of that with you guys. It almost, I don't think it's what you intended to sound like. This is how it could be perceived. It's kind of how it's being perceived by the,
I'm sure. But again,
you know where I'm gonna go with this.
absolutely.
Permit advisory board, why have them? That's what I'm getting from this discussion. I don't think that's what you mean, but maybe it is what you. And
Doing a step down, I would much rather see volunteers, because again, if they have no purse, they have no authority, they have no goals, they don't make. I could throw out dreams and wishes, as a board member, yes, we have funding to do some of this stuff.
But that organizes volunteers, brings it to a consensus, bringing different people who have different passions and areas. So you don't have people walking in the door saying, I want this to the skate park. A central unit for us to bring that to you, and we know, trust
And it
me, we
becomes
know.
more of a volunteer-based situation where they dictate how successful or how much they can. Again, it doesn't fall down. Setting programs and trying to decipher whether this is good or bad or how to budget for this stuff. Much like, Miller kind of alluded to, it's a club system. If you pull it off, have at it, or if you put buses and say, hey, go to South Sea, that's a heck of a lot cheaper than go with something subpar. Go to the bank, go to the seven, go to the bank, go, have, again, elementary straight, you got very successful system with us, with basketball, cheer, things like that, things that we couldn't do well. I know you're very passionate because you sit out and work, you spend a lot of time. But again,
but that's not the only,
what's the ultimate?
that's not the only. I think, I hear where you're coming from. I really do hear where you're coming from. So if we're gonna go ahead, we're gonna look at the master plans and things like that, which we should. That's what we exactly should be doing. Then I really don't know what the advisory board, why we have.
I agree. I agree.
I mean,
What did they used to do? They used to pick trees for a year. I mean, that's, again, why is there? Yeah.
I don't know.
I don't know why it's there.
But at some point, we asked the advisory board to come on the ball,
That's what it is.
so that we can have
And so now, I
productive
mean, more
things
involved,
coming forward.
now, why get more involved? Because we're not, swap.
That is exactly how it.
But I don't-
Why waste your time?
Based on what I see, I think we still haven't decided, and
No.
we can't decide collectively here tonight at this meeting, but we haven't even come to a good discussion of whether we're going to move forward with even a part-time director or potentially a full-time director with a lot more responsibility
Or no direction.
or an over.
We have 3 options. And that's why I was suggesting earlier, what is our board's? We've been pushing this down the road, and I think Mike, you know where I'm going with this part. It's been pushed down the road. Parks and Rec's been pushed down the road, pushed down the road, pushed down the road. This discussion that we're having right here has not been. And it needs to be. What do we want? We don't want Parks and Rec board. Fine if that's where we want to go with. We don't want Parks and Rec. Fine if that's where we want to go, but we've got to make those decisions. And that's what we've been just kind of being the status quo. And let's just keep doing it. Let's keep doing it. This and this truly, I believe, Kelsey, is what the big picture was, in my opinion, tonight, was to take a look at, let's look at the program. I didn't know what this meeting would be the end all be all, or if there would have to be subsequent meetings. But the idea is it really needs to be looked at because it hasn't been looked at thoroughly. And that's what we're trying to do. And to do that thoroughly, we need to know all the parts. And we're providing parts and background that a lot of people don't know because they're not in the parts with advising for. Has there been some good things with it? Sure. Have there been some yucky things with it? Sure. Has it cost you this money? Yes, it is. Cost you money? Population or people? I don't know what the right answer is, but here you made some very valid points. You know, where do we want to go? Got three options.
And if you take a lot of the programming away, the sports aspects out of it really doesn't leave much for
No.
pay for. So again, that should fall back on what is the master plan of the village? We follow that.
What
And
would
we
the
have
board
volunteer
do?
base.
Why would the board not be involved in all the other programs like the park? Blissfield on tap, movies.
They can, but in a volunteer base, much like a lot of the events, like Blissfield on tap, ran exclusively by volunteers, right? Like a party exclusively those volunteer base, right? We don't need somebody to oversee that to, you know, at what cost.
Somebody's got to oversee it.
I don't think you have a full understanding of, I would encourage you to come to our meetings. I would. Because what you're describing is volunteer based, but it provides a central location for these volunteers to delegate. You know, I don't view it as, I want this, I want this, I want this. It's okay, like the bathrooms are really bad. What can we do? And if at all anything, right? That's been sitting there. What can we do? I like the park beautification aspect of it. That's why I implemented the community volunteer days. Completely volunteer based, but provides a central location, working with the village to blast it out there. So I encourage you to come to our meetings and not look at it as us being like, I want. It's we're the people out there at the games, in the parks, and it provides centralization for volunteers.
Agree, but it is a board necessity, not necessary for that level. Again, you know, I read how much Danielle's on those lists. You know, I really had kind of nitpicked. I do read through your bits, things like that. I try to keep aside. And again, you know, I know that she's kind of the contact person, the go-to person. She explains to me, and she delegates things to different volunteers, sort of the contact person. And I agree with that to an extent. But again, it's hard for me to say, I've got these different committees that really want to see something happen. But again, ultimate first holders is this board, and we can't make promises. You know, I want to make promises or let people let boards down if you're wasting your time saying, we do all this legwork, spending all this time to do this and come up with these ideas, when ultimately we have to nitpick and choose which priorities and what we can officially do as a big picture of the operations of the village. I don't think that's fair to a board or, you know, a volunteer-based committee.
Great. Personally, I can only speak for myself, with all the board members here. That's not my expectation.
And I think she's made some for the board members. That it's not their expectation.
Yeah. Everyone's kind of newer, and so we're kind of getting on the feet again, but
Very true.
yeah, goes back to,
Well, okay, let's go around the, I mean, we're not voting or anything, obviously, can we afford a full-time driver, you guys? No, absolutely not.
No, it doesn't,
All
it doesn't make sense to us.
Let's not drag stuff out. You know, I don't think what people thought, and then we can try to see our aircraft. Right, I don't want to hear the fluff. Let's just say that, we can't do that.
I would like
That
to,
would kill it.
I would like to put it onto our capital improvement plan, example, 2030. I don't know, I'm just throwing stuff out there. I think there was a way to do it, I would love for it to happen. Do I think it's a pipe dream problem? So it's that damn skate thing. You know what I'm saying?
Skate park?
Skate park, yeah, it's a pipe dream, but I don't think there's anything wrong with having a goal if there were to happen. I don't know, that's.
It's in your, it's in our, radar. That's the thing, it's in our. radar.
But again.
But can we do it now? No, we
You know,
cannot,
we're
but I,
talking about the skate park, right? So how, you know, I know some of you guys, or all you guys are newer, but you know, we've talked about the skate park for years and years with a volunteer thing, and they raise money and you know, people come in and build some of this equipment, right? And now we're talking about replacing that every couple of years, like $300,000 worth of equipment. And that's stupid to me. Like, you can go to Ypsilanti and say, hey, you guys spent $150,000, you know, $40 to $50 square foot or something on cement, concrete. path or, you know, I mean, trail or skate park that never has to be replaced, you know? Why would we want to budget $300,000 for these ad hoc repairs that we continue to do on this equipment that's really not even state board approved, et cetera, right? Let's do it once, let's do it cheaper, and be done with it. But again, if your board is sitting there kind of talking and discussing how do I go about it, but again, if we can't afford it, or if we have a different vision, if we want to move it, maybe we don't want it in the park, right? Again, it's this sort of, what is the, is it top down or the bottom up approach? And there's that inflation of decision making.
I think, I think there can be a coordinated event. There can be coordination. I don't know if it's necessarily happening like right now today, but I do think I have some things I can't think off the top of my head. But I think there have been some things that we've said, okay, the department, right, this is where, it's because we've talked about being down. This is where capital improvement is, because some people did not understand it and Danielle.
And I think this board is probably one of the more challenging boards that we deal with because planning commission is statutory, DDA has their own funding, and Parks and Rec board is advisory. So I do think there's a lot of benefit to having the advisory Parks and Rec board. I think they've done some amazing things. I think they've helped coordinate volunteers. This is where it gets challenging, and I understand what Kelsey's saying. I disagree with it because you guys ultimately have the decision and they're advisory. So they, as an advisory board, like you said, can talk about solutions and ideas, but at the end of the day, if those ideas and solutions come here and there's no buy-in here, that it goes nowhere. And so that's why this decision is being talked about with this, because if your ultimate goal is whatever it is, that it's, we're not gonna do Parks and Rec anymore, then it doesn't, there's no point in them having a meeting to come up with all these solutions. Now, if your goal is that we want to try to provide something, they do provide a lot of benefit, because if you're saying, yeah, if you're saying we're gonna keep the soccer programs and the flag football programs, and we're gonna do some parks, they can help weed out the dynamics of that soccer program. Because you as council have said, this is our goal. Now they're kind of helping to navigate the ins and outs of that. So I think you guys are all kind of saying the same thing in different ways because you're seeing it as a different perspective. You know, Kelly's a board member, so she's saying I should be included in all of this, and Gwen's saying I see both sides. But I think at the end of the day, you guys have to tell us from this meeting, I guess is my thought, what is our goal with Parks and Rec? Is it to try to do something? Is it to get rid of it? Is it to in 10 years grow it? And then from there, we can take that direction to a board that can help you, because you as council, you have a lot of roles. You're like me over the entire village, so they can weed out the Parks and Rec stuff so that you guys don't have to regularly have meetings like this just for Parks and Recreation. Obviously, like this is kind of a one-off because we're talking the department as a whole, but you get into the minutia and the little things, you don't have to do that. It kind of takes something off of council's plate too.
So my question is, if we don't have Parks and Rec advisory board, who gets the volunteers to do these programs?
I don't
We would
think
just
we
wait.
could do that.
That's not what the board would.
That would not be, so my recommendation. Okay, my recommendation was full-time, and I totally get the budget, or to cut the rec programs. If you decided to cut the recreation programs, that does not mean, my recommendation does not include getting rid of the advisory board. What I would envision is that we would no longer offer those sports programs, but that we would still have an advisory board that could help with volunteers and be active in a master plan. They can help with volunteer days, they can help with the park programs, they can help do recreation activities, light up the park to bring people into our parks. They can do
Right, at the park.
right, they can do a wagon walk thing. So I still envision, maybe I'm wrong, because again, it's ultimately up to you as council, but I would envision them having still a very active role, just a different role than what they have now. This kind of, that was how I guess my recommendation, what I was thinking. We can certainly talk about that some more,
Yeah,
but
you're gonna ask yourself two questions, like why, you know, yes, you guys kind of like spearheaded a little bit the erosion control, but literally, what does the Parks and Rec program or board have any say? Again, right, we're.
We know that, we
But
recognize
you know
that.
what I mean? But again, what is the point when we're the ones that have to sit down with the experts in the engineering and the, you know, DNR, et cetera, and say, can we afford this? This is, you know, this,
And
our
we-
party, things like that. So really, it's kind of a, because it both fell into that sort of position. I don't want to just hand stuff out to make them work. You know, like, they're doing something, you know, that to me isn't necessary. The whole Parks and Rec master plan. Again, yes, it's a great, that's what I'm asking. Well, would you let me finish here? The whole Parks and Rec master plan, did this council did we have an opportunity to say, as it was being created, this is sort of along the mission and vision statement of what the overall success of the building. Again, it was something that was created by a board and then created and built and presented, right? But we really have no overall input on saying, this is what we want to see for our parks as an overall vision and mission.
We had that opportunity as board, yes, we did.
You guys,
Didn't we just vote on it?
We did.
We should vote on it.
Exactly.
So if we just
Exactly. It
voted
was a
on it.
rubber stamp. It was never. It was never created.
Voting on something isn't a rubber stamp. We had the opportunity to look at that and compare that to our current master plan.
After the whole thing was done.
Doesn't mean we couldn't pick it apart if we didn't want to.
That's right.
We have, and seemed really inefficient to spend all this time and effort and money, et cetera, in creating a master plan, and when all of a sudden we start ripping it up after that board approves it and sends it off from us.
We ripped
That
apart
doesn't make
everything,
sense.
we ripped apart everything.
The messy power to do it.
Well,
Rather than saying.
maybe
"Here's
maybe
our
it does, but my experience in watching this council previously, before I came on council, that's exactly what you did. That's exactly what you
Are we
guys
as a
do.
board gonna create a plan for our parks? Because apparently Parks and Rec advisory board kind of did that little master plan, right? Do we have time to do that? Are we doing that?
It should be 2%, because again, if they want $1 million worth of improvements over the next 3 years.
And we could still do that. We can still go back
It's a
over it.
waste of time for them to say, oh, we're setting
It's
up all
not.
this plan.
They're presenting it to us.
And then we.
The intent. But they're giving us something to go on.
You
We're
decided.
not having to create the wheel. They're saying, here's the wheel. How do you see the wheel fitting within the greater wheel of what we do here?
There was something in particular, you could have gone through the 1, 2, 3, 4, A, B, C, D and said, you need to make revamp this, and I'm not sure.
And is our master plan a living document?
Always.
We can always go back and
Yeah.
review.
I mean, they did a lot of work on that where, you know, how many extra meetings would we have had to have to create?
Well, the surveys, the creation of a document,
we had surveys,
Very good.
we sent the draft out, we had a 30-day comment period. I mean, council is not limited to only acting and getting involved on something when it's presented at council. Every
But
step.
then I've been told, oh, in microwave, I'm asking questions in the process or in the middle of something, right? So again, where is the fine line to say? Don't get involved at this point because you're not involved at this point. This committee.
Your resident Mike Gunter. And resident Mike Gunter could have gone ahead and taken the survey. I'm hoping that you did.
Absolutely.
Okay, and then President Mike Gunter could have come in and said, well, at one of our Parks and Rec meetings and wore that hat and said, I disagree with this, this, or this. And then when we got to President Mike Gunter as the council, you could have still said, nope, 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 or rethink.
True, but again, I don't want to sit there after this all thing was.
But that's,
Built and approved.
that's okay. It's okay because it's a fluid dot.
Is it kind of like a wish list?
Well, part of it is like a wish list, but a lot of it is no, these are the.
I mean, a
these
wish
are the
list of
stats.
things that we would like to do eventually.
Some of it is, but
And
not
some
all of
of
it
it
is.
might not ever be approved by this board.
Exactly. And we
But we
recognize
have
that,
a plan,
and that's recognized.
yes, but we have a plan.
And-
Go on.
That's how I see it.
I think
That's how I see
when it was mentioned by the public that, you know, when we have our meetings, now it's very clear. And she says, there are some new members, they did not understand. They thought it was exactly what you're saying, like, they take the ideas to us and we make, Danielle went very clearly through that and says, no, 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 no. This is how it works. And she did that explanation. So I believe it's pretty clear that we recognize we have to. We do the surveys, we do the grunt work, the legwork, and we take it to council, and we recognize that it may or may not go through council. Would you agree with that, council?
Absolutely, absolutely.
So, part-time director of option.
I think there are challenges with the part-time director as it. That's my opinion.
We've had two since I've been on com, so.
Yes.
Yeah.
There have been challenges for both of us.
So it's, if I can say something, I don't think it's not happy with an individual. We're not happy with success, so yeah.
Okay.
So it looks like. Because we spent too much out of them for 15 hours. We want them to do 40 hours and 15. And if they can't do it, then it doesn't go. That's what I'm.
Right, the system is messed up.
So we don't. To me, a part-time director's,
But I'm just throwing stuff as discussion on the table. It could be an option, as someone alluded to, okay? Perhaps you go ahead and you do away with the adult programs and you keep the kids. I don't know if that's the right answer. That's what we as a council have to say. You know what? We're not doing it right now well, but you know what? It's because we've been doing all of this other stuff. Just go ahead and the other crap and just go with the kids.
In some of these programs, there's a lot of.
Yeah, quality
there's a lot
over quantity.
quirky parts that we don't know.
Now, but Danielle, let me throw this at you. Then Danielle makes some very valid points, and it was concurred with by the former director that the challenges of the coaches, the challenges of the referees. It sounds,
Parts.
it sounds ideal, and as so many things do sound idealistic until you get down to the details. Devil's always in the details.
so Mike said earlier, if we can't do something right, we shouldn't. I agree with that. And I made some highlights, if you will, on my sheet here. Adult softball and adult volleyball. Adrian has a robust program in each of those sports. So, and Adrian was so far away. Right here.
Right.
If we're gonna cut something, my suggestion was softball. And volleyball. Fine.
I think we have to change the system in some fashion. If, because we, obviously, what we have had, what we have has not worked with two part-time people.
It's been more than that.
More than that.
Well,
So if it hasn't, but in our recent history anyway, that we're familiar with, it has not worked. So it doesn't, by us adding on, by us just bringing on another part-time director, will not change
that's why we
anything.
need to have discussion.
It doesn't make them successful.
Right, it isn't setting it up for success. So we have to change the system. And how do we change it? Whether we get to eliminating programs, that might be what we do, but it doesn't mean that that's how we have to do it. How do we change the system to be successful for a part-time person, or how do we change the system that a part-time person is not needed? So if it were to go to the board and we were to keep the board, and I understand what Danielle's recommending, but if we're gonna look at everything on the table, one of those options is to eliminate the Parks and Rec or minimize it, reduce it, if I find the right word, to such a degree that we as a village, we provide the lanes. And then we let other people do the programming that they want to do in Blissfield that provides success. With them realizing that they not only have to get participants, they have to get support staff for those games, umpires, referees,
Which is
line stripers, which might be club, or it might just be someone local. That's how the whole flag football program, because I'm going to speak to that, that's how it got started. It got started because our son wanted to play flag football. So we called Onstead because they were the closest one. And Onstead said to us, man, just start your own account. It's simple. Here's all you have to do. And it was very simple. And so it was run by volunteers the first several years. We were able to work in conjunction with the school. Our referees were varsity football players. So now you've got a bond created between the high schoolers, the football players, the playing on the football field. You know how that pumps the kids up, man, under the lights, all that kind of stuff. We're creating some synergy and excitement within our village. And now the soccer it blew up into soccer and everything else. Cheerleading, all of those things kind of came with it. But now, I mean, my kids were out when soccer came in, and then we started going to other communities, which is very club-like. Maybe that's what we have to do in order to have something successful. But I think we really have to consider our system of within Parks and Rec and letting the board have that responsibility of solving the advisory board to solve those problems. I think for my personal opinion is that we step back out of it so that in a sense we have very little to review. And maybe it would at that point become kind of a rubber stamp. I know it doesn't always have to have a negative connotation. I don't think you're saying that either. But I think that if we're really looking to solve the problem, we have to realize what our strengths are as a village and what the strengths of the advisory board are, and then what it is that the village, that the people want in their programming, and then let them run it. Like I said, we provide the land, we provide the space, they provide everything else. And then they can help set to determine their costs. And it isn't being run through the village. And have all what the incidental costs, was that the term you used, incidental?
I think I said indirect.
Indirect, good word. Indirect costs. And then we're doing what we can do well. The advisory council is doing what they can do well. And then the volunteers and the families and the parents, they're doing what they can do well. Does that make sense?
It's just like the pickleball. You know, it's again, you've got a group that are very interested and involved. And we can provide, much like them, you know, we provide the facility. But again, you know, if they want to form this ad hoc club or whatever, you can say, hey, Ray Jones is in charge of it. He's going to be the content person. He's going to work with Danielle and say, hey, you know, Friday, all day long, can we book it, you know, for tournaments or whatever. And then we're going to be providing the facility, providing upkeep, et cetera. But again, the success on those other programs of fall back on somebody, you know, but not about time. They want to make it successful. They can do it themselves, and there's again, they determine their own success for good, right? It doesn't fall back on us saying, oh, we have to provide this first thing.
Almost creating like a different friends of the library, friends of like Little League and softball. Are there any other organizations here in town where they run it and we just provide the one? And they're running it with success. So you're going to have more success the more people you can bring in. You can tie in with the school, which is always what we're trying to do. We're trying to maintain our relationships with this village, with the rest of our community, and how do we best do that? That's how I'm kind of looking at this. We would really want to pare down a lot of these things because we don't want this to cost. We don't want it to be a money losing proposition, because then we all lose when it is. And it kind of is now. So we have to change this process, this system, so that it breaks even with the indirect. Is it? Yeah, thank you. I don't know why it's sticking. So even with indirect costs, we need to break even. And if we can't do that, then we probably should not. Unfortunately.
And that goes back to that advisory board. a lot of these events wouldn't go like open up events. Like at the park, we could still do, you could still do, Blissfield on tap, et cetera. You can have a part training person that is an over here, like they put a contact person. But these are all things that are whether they're volunteers.
But
And
that's
they're
what
doing
we're
it is trying to make money and reinvest it back in the parks, right? That is the whole idea of these events more so than talking about the sports aspects and things like that. So you do a lot, you could do park cleanup days, you could do a lot of this stuff, you could do, the trees and things like that. But again, the
That
whole
wouldn't have-
benefit of it is
But
at
that would
least
not,
break even or make some
we
money
wouldn't
and
have
then
to
you
have.
invest it.
If you just did those.
What's that?
If we just did those items that you're alluding to, just go find out the park, the blissful intent, that's what the state, you would not have to be directed at all.
Right.
That would be, I think, at this level, this council giving direction to the advisory firms and report. This is what your goals
Well,
are,
that's what,
right? And this is one of the goals.
this is what I was hoping with after this discussion, that direction from this board, and I think that's where Danielle was going with the wow, is that was what's the direction from this board? That's the reason not having the meeting in November. That's the reason for, because tomorrow we have a meeting and the goal is to have an idea of what we're gonna tell the board tomorrow. Am I right with that? That's what I.
Yeah, I don't know what my recommendation is gonna be in November. I've really been thinking about this, like, it's not something I've taken lightly at all, but yes, I agree. That was my hope. Is that tomorrow I would be able to go to the Parks and Rec board and say, okay, council. Met last night, we talked about this is their direction, now how are we going to accomplish whatever that is? Whether it be like you said, if we're not doing the programs and we don't get a director, and we can still do some of these events and other things that they've gotta be revenue neutral, that, we've gotta at least cover our costs and that they've gotta be volunteer run. And if they're not these things, then we can't do them. And then my plan would be to go through with the board and say, okay, what can we do with volunteers? What can we make sure that we're losing money, we can't do it? And kind of go through and figure
Literally
it
how
out.
we did it in the DDA level. We'd love on events and things like that, but if they're not successful, people are volunteering, and there's miscommunication. If it's not successful, we're gonna move on.
Let me throw this man at council. So, let's go ahead and say, director. And, just so, again, as part of the discussion, where does the money come from? For, flag and walk. Flag and walk is at and okay. What do you learn? Flag and walk is gonna come down here to park in February and bring your dog, you're gonna walk, and they're gonna get a couple of peanut butter. That's what it's gonna be. So. Okay. I didn't explain that.
This tail is wagging.
Okay, no, you're right. You come down to the park, you walk, your dog's all done, you're gonna get a little cup, some peanut butter, and you did the walk. That's all it is. So as far as dog,
You can sell it one day.
it's a dog. Well, that's what I'm asking before. Will there still be some allocation that the board if to the Parks and Rec Advisory Board, or it wouldn't have to be the $7,000 or $10,000. I mean, or would the board be expecting Parks and Rec to get sponsorship, and it's gonna be a tough one to get sponsorship for that kind of stuff. So
We need that kind of direction.
that's what I'm saying. We need that kind of direction when we talk tomorrow.
Yes, we do.
So
I
know.
know. Big believer in work plans, you know what I mean? At budget time, that should be something that you get through that. Meeting requesting this for the fiscal year, right? These are ideas, these are what we want to accomplish.
So if the Parks and Recreation, and this, again, so we have some information, if they do a program or an event, I guess we're not doing programs, so let's say we do, say we're crazy, as an example, so we do that, and we charge $20, so it covers our expenses. Then they don't have to come to council because you're saying you're doing this parks event and you're covering your costs, so it's revenue or expenditure neutral, whatever you want to call it. Or does that have to come to you guys? And maybe that's a bad example because we already have that, but I was trying to give you an example of something that's.
So I was seeing two different things happening coming out of this discussion right now with this topic. One is, I think the conversation is going to be ongoing for what happens at tomorrow's meeting as well, because it's like, well, wait a minute, they didn't talk about this last week. So what do we do about this? Well, we have to continue the conversation. So rather than everybody trying to make final decisions tonight and tomorrow night, we just need to keep the conversation going.
Yes.
Yeah, and that's the one thing I see. The second thing is, if we have something that's been approved for a specific dollar amount for Parks and Rec, I'm of the opinion, if you have $5,000 to budget for that fiscal year, you have $5,000 to budget. Spend it. 2020, whatever that is, then you spend it. If you want to spend more than that, now you have to come and get approval. And then you have to justify why you have to go over budget.
Or for the 2027,
That-
we would say,
I know that government does work with some of those things, but for the most part, those are rubber stamp kinds of, that's a redundancy that does not need to be there, in my opinion. If we say you have $5,000 to spend $200 for peanut butter cups, spend your money on the $200 and don't come and tell us about it.
we can use funds in budget, that's great, and then we'll go ahead and perhaps as we go through things, we're like, okay, we don't need a 5, we don't need 2, whatever, okay. As long as we know we've got some.
I agree with you to an extent, but I don't, I can get where,
Right,
we can argue this with the Florida's position as well, like, okay. EDA design committee, we want $5,000 to beautify the downtown, right? Sure, okay, sounds great in theory, now let's say we start paying their flagpole scheme. Does that accomplish the overall plan, right? Again, there's checks and balances, and that's just layers of government that we all beat, but again, it is what is the overall plan? I'm not just gonna say, we budgeted for your little crazy idea, it doesn't quote, it doesn't validate.
Right, those things are already approved at the board level. I do, but they're already approved at the board level. So if you're doing that and the wagon walk is an approved event and whatever you're spending for the wagon walk. Now, if you decide you want to go with jelly instead of peanut butter, I don't think that you should come to council and ask for permission.
Right.
Change.
We have a peanut butter and jelly.
Now you're going to confuse everybody.
So we can still have our, if council's comfortable with that, we can keep our monies for 2026 budget or whatever.
Yeah, but we're not making any decisions, so it's already there.
Yeah. Well, I would say. Right on. In the month of January, you could say, hey, you know what, you budgeted 5 or 10, 5 grand or 10 grand, to 10. You don't have the record one or something else. And I could understand why we could do, I can understand why the board would say that.
I would say that, but I'd say if it's gonna change from that overall, budget, approved budget, it's not like we're gonna say, oh, we're gonna take that 10,000 from the position and now wire to cornhole. No, that is not, because that is not.
That's what I, okay.
That is not me, that's not how it's signed. Because we would nitpick through everything, right? You can't say, we're gonna take the funding from the position and start doing something else. Right?
No, I agree with that.
Okay.
I agree. That would need to be a council-wide decision to make that change. But if there's something already specific within their own budget that they're recommending that we have approved.
That answer our question for our discussion for tomorrow.
I mean, I think it gets us going. I think it's right, we're gonna have to continue to talk.
Well, right, and when I said that yes or no, I think it does need to continue to be discussed, but I do think we do need to have a better idea whether or not we're having them.
Well, you're gonna find that out as you guys talk about solutions, yeah.
We have to get tomorrow whether or not we're gonna be having a director. We need to know.
I would.
Specifically with adult volleyball registration.
Well, I know that's baked into it.
With adult volleyball, indoor volleyball, that's registration should have been open a month ago, so. I need to know if that's a question that you guys can answer tonight, or if that's something we need to discuss now. Where do we go for that program right now?
And if we go ahead, not trying to be smart, but yeah, the spring programs are gonna be right around the corner. And the spring programs are going to be, and this is why I don't wanna keep kicking this down the road.
Right.
So that's what, that is, again. Why,
You're
this is,
asking,
this
you're
is the,
asking, did we plan, we approved that we were gonna offer volleyball this year, right? That was in the budget, that was in the work plans, et cetera.
yeah, but if there's not a direct, because if the director does it, if there's no director, I'm not doing it.
Where we call it volunteer base, director base, Danielle has a lot on her plate, I don't think that's necessarily an option, never to continue these programs.
Well, can we get somebody steps up or it doesn't have a volunteer steps up or it's not? gonna
Does council have to make the decision on how that works out? Does council have to make the decision? If there's no director and people want to play volleyball, does council have to make the decision on how that volleyball gets organized?
No, I think the decision council needs to make, I think, maybe I'm wrong, is are you going to hire a director in any capacity? If the answer is no, then it goes back to Parks and Rec and we say, we're not hiring a director. How are we going to either make these programs happen or what are we getting rid of? And because they're to me, they're advisory and they do play a vital role so that you guys don't have to go through all of that. So you're saying what we're telling you guys is you're getting no director. And then I'm gonna say, we're getting no director. I can't run this program. Who's gonna step up? And if nobody can do it, we're cutting this program or whatever, or they're gonna.
Or there will have to be another solution that
That's
the board would oversee, that the advisory board would oversee.
Right. That's what I would say.
that's what I'm hearing. If the cost outweighs
If we don't have the volunteers and if we're not covering our costs, so if adult volleyball is gonna run in the negative. $1,000 denied right there, because you guys have said you can't run programs in a deficit. So, I mean, I think to your point, Ken, that's where I think you guys have value in this advisory board is they can figure that out. So you guys have said, this is what we're doing, now they have to figure it out.
But it needs to stop at the advisory board level, because I'm not expecting you or anybody else in that front office.
Step up.
And do multiple more on your plate, and then make it happen. So-
Is it advisory board or not?
right.
No, it's somebody in the board takes that
If-
decision. or not.
We're a volunteer.
It's a volunteer. Not paid, it's not paid for, it's not. That's what I'm hearing.
Yeah.
That's like the overall thing that I'm.
So do we have a,
So it's.
no,
Do we have a,
I still don't understand if we have a part-time person or not.
I'm saying, it sounds like no, and that then it's gonna be up to the advisory board. Does adult volleyball, does that pay for itself? Are we gonna be able to get, are we going to be able to get volunteers to support that program? Is it gonna pay for itself? If it's not, then it's not happening.
Let me ask you, is there value in having a part-time? From you? From your point of view.
Boy, I don't know if I'm a fair person to ask me. And I'll tell you why. I'm not in the audience. I don't hear this. I think that there are pros and I think there are cons to having. I am split on it. By heart, buddy, if you ask me, gosh darn it, yes, I really want somebody to. But then when you start going to the real, that's the idealistic part. The reality part. Coaches, people, sign up registrations. Oh, we're late on registration. Can you sign us up now? Oh, shoot, we gotta sign you up. What for? All that stuff is craziness of it. That I say, no, don't do it at all.
No part-time, right?
Yeah, I say no director at all. No part-time, no full-time, no nothing. That's because it gets crazy and it's not fun. If that, oh, you have a team that are no
But
good,
it's
no
crazy,
coaches.
it's not fun and there's not enough time.
And if you're not gonna do it right, to do it right, why are we gonna do it? And that's the part that drives me crazy. But that drives me crazy on a lot of things, you know what I'm saying? The idealistic part of how it sounds great, but when you get to the details, it can't work.
Well, we're probably talking in circles here too, but again,
Yes, you
we're
are.
talking about adult ends. Again, we budgeted, $10,000 for that. If it does cost us a little too much to make it, especially. Yeah, try to clear me, that was where you deviate doesn't always, sometimes it's just the greater good, right? Community building or business building, et cetera. It doesn't always have to be money. So if we could pull volleyball off without a director, somebody wants to step up and it may cost us 500, may cost us $1,000. I don't think that's a bad investment that provide our residents a little bit of recreation.
You are talking in circles and you are talking on both sides of your house. You know this.
Yeah.
Yeah, I appreciate
But-
you saying that sentiment because boy, it does not sound like that a lot of times when we care about the well-being and enrichment that is brings
Yes,
to people.
yeah, exactly. So, again, it's challenging.
I take it as this, and I'm sure Danielle will explain to the board much better than I. We're gonna, they're gonna run it, not gonna be a director. They're gonna run it, and we're gonna provide it. That's what I wrote down. That's essentially what I'm hearing. And I'm not saying that's bad or good,
Off the staff, it's not going to be.
we don't question, that's how I understand that, correct?
That's how I heard it as well, yes.
Are we missing anything else?
Not built in the village at all.
Nothing's gonna come to the village. That's what I'm hearing. Then the village won't be involved at all in anything.
Fun
Go to a volunteer.
come from the village. Sports Connect specifically, restrictions.
That's not gonna come to the village. That's what they're saying.
That opens up another can because then who's the person that's ultimately collecting this is what pocket, to him. So I think.
I
There's
know.
a lot of
You
things
have
to get in this into these questions.
Yeah.
Okay.
So Ken said that when his two let him play flag football,
Yeah.
you talked on said, I'm still start trunk program is pretty easy. And I think the advice you got from them is they had a board for flag football that included probably these two people who oversee registration on the all that stuff, kind of keep, checks and balances of what money is, look at it, how much, what. I would see the same thing with the advisory board, said, talking specifically about volleyball, that there is a volleyball board that would do, that is structured somewhat the same way that you have a few people, two or three at least two, probably three, to take the online registration.
Their online registration should come, if it's volunteer, why are you putting it through the?
It wouldn't, I don't mean.
No, they would set up their own fund,
Yes.
Oh, okay, then that's.
like their own bank account, or I'm sure the bank can set up something. Yes.
Okay.
So, that leads me to, is there anything else that we kind of need to decide without making an official decision?
Yeah.
That ball meeting for tomorrow night's meeting? That you can think of at this time? That we haven't already hashed out or something?
We kind of need to know whether we're gonna hire a part-time or a full-time director.
Well, more than likely, it
It's
seems
not,
that
it's not filled right now, so there's not anything to do about it as far as volleyball. So
Until we can really make our mind as to what we're gonna do for months.
we need to make an
To get it-
official decision.
Would the interim director take us through this fiscal year and then we make a decision?
You guys have budgeted money, so if you're looking to hire somebody part-time, I mean, the budget is there. But if you're looking not to, I would put that on the agenda.
That would
Because you're changing, you're
Yeah.
making a change or.
Well, I mean, we've already set up two guys in our recent history, collective history, why would we want to set up a third person though?
And that's that's
It fits, not
exactly,
the person itself.
Right, it's the system that we've
It's the system
created.
that we've created, yes.
That's what I would say for the record, unless that position's job description changed somehow, I will not vote for another part-timer, and I certainly won't vote for a full-timer, just because we can't afford it. And until that board, an advisory board, or whoever brings us a different job description, that's gonna set that person up for success, I would vote for them.
I agree with that. I mean, I would not recommend you guys to unless we do. Cause I agree, I don't wanna hire somebody and then we're just in the same boat again.
That's why this discussion was.
Takes a million, wasn't to him. It was, I think we were expecting him to do 40 hours in the 15, and it's not fair. So thank you for what you've done. I've seen you grow this program. So our expectation was too much for what little time we were.
I mean, I think it required that.
But the majority of us had been on this board when we discussed, it was sort of a control your destiny. If you want that full-time position to become full-time, it needs to be almost self-funding or making money, or, you know what I mean, to grow it. We haven't seen that. So again, that's not well, personal on any level. It's just the success of limited, small, money, people, volunteers, et cetera. It just makes it.
Who chairs the meetings from? Right.
There's a chairperson and vice chair, the director's not on.
That's a whole other
The role, the director and the administrator staff support.
I'm the chairperson. So I want to make sure I know what to say. That's why I'm asking. But so before we go anywhere, I want to hang tight. Would we ever meet tomorrow? What would we be saying to our advisory board? No, see, I'm not trying to be silly. I'm serious. What are we going to say to our board?
What are your questions?
Well, I think that we're gonna have to say to our board that we don't have a part-time director unless we can come up with some solutions to change it and set them up for success. Or we run these programs with only volunteers outside of the village, and that we need to talk about overall how, and I honestly, the approach I would take to the board, and ultimately it's gonna be up to the board, but I would recommend that let's start, the next program is adult volleyball. What's the solution for that, and how do we fix it, or find it, or how do we move forward or not? And then once we make a decision on that, then we're gonna have to say, okay, the next program is spring soccer. How do we make this successful or not, or how we can, I think we're almost gonna have to approach it.
Jump by jump.
Yes, because I think it's too much to do all at one time.
Okay.
That's how I would recommend the board approach it, is kind of piece it together and say, you know,
Without a director.
right.
Correct me if I'm wrong.
Unless we can make changes to a part-time director, but we did that before Emilio, again, trying to,
We did.
it's a hard thing to do. It was not,
It's not,
yeah.
so
Well, I'm just gonna show we're not big enough. To provide a full-time director, yes, and let's do it based on the population, the funding, and everything else that we've got under people. I don't think they should waste their time talking about.
That's kind of what I would
Okay.
tell them too, like, we need to, unless we can make big enough changes, but I don't know that we can.
I hear you, I don't disagree. I'm totally on board with the whole financial fiscal responsibility, totally get it. I'm comfortable with what you're saying, is the board comfortable with what Danielle is saying then, I mean, you guys are.
but I think we still are going to have to make the decision in the council on this, on the hard direction
Bill or not, Bill.
of the
The hard decision.
of a hard direction
Yeah.
for Parks and Rec overall. In spite of the master plan. But review it, we need to review it, so I would suggest we do
All right.
individually.
I'm gonna keep pushing, I know.
Yeah, no, it's fair,
Sorry.
because all of these events, right, nothing changed, I mean,
say next year.
It is gonna be next.
Oh, no, I know that, I know that, I mean, I'm just saying, I mean, we can't keep,
You mean in
I don't
January?
want to kick this
Make a
down.
decision in
Correct.
January.
Correct.
I would put something on the agenda January 12th for the part-time director. And I think that the Parks and Rec Board, we have a budget this year that if we can make some things still happen with volunteers and with what we have, then we do, then again, we're not losing money to do that. And then next year, we're gonna have to, we already have work plans, lots of them, so we're gonna have to, as a board, say, okay, what monies are we gonna request for appropriations for our volunteers for 27? Because I guess how I would approach it, but
I would also suggest that we review the parks master plan and then check that with our capital organization.
well, in Parks and Rec is gonna have to revise that master plan in order,
Yeah, exactly.
which they.
But at least we'll be more familiar with it as well. That's fine.
I know it was a long discussion, I get that, but this is the most discussion we've ever had on Parks and Rec. It may not seem like we've got a whole lot of places, but we really did.
Well, I think we made some progress.
I think
Sorry, this committee, the whole meeting, are very
they are,
back and forth.
yes, and we know that
I think
anything
the dialogue is really great. And we do have something to go back to your board with and some decisions to make. And to help start going. Even if it is.
okay, but
Right.
at least we have an idea, at least we have something we were for January 12th, and we'll have a decision at that time, and the decision will be made, go. You go to the next step, and that's.
Good go, again, discuss this. I was the jerk, the league, I was the jerk to the Boy Scout, right, again, this is. First off, this.
No. Now, did you talk on both sides of your mouth? Yes, we did, but are you a jerk? No.
Yeah, it's tough, again.
It's
Yeah.
a
But we do love
22.
to. Right. Right, ideally, we would like it to be, we come out breaking even. But if it's gonna cost us a few $1,000s to maintain something that we've got going that's going well, that's not a loss either.
Right.
That's not a loss either. So. It's.
Okay. Oh, I pulled. Good, I thought that's what we moved along. Okay.
Like we should.
So,
Right.
I know.
Like you want.
You cannot move full time. I would love it,
So.
but it's not. I know. Did you say over there?
We done?
You guys good? All right. Find out, thank you.
Thanks.
No.